What happens when the woman who spent 3 years making herself invisible walks into a room full of the most dangerous men alive, wearing a dress that makes it impossible to look away? The music stopped. The crystal glasses went silent. And it wasn't the gasps of the elite that froze her blood. It was the low, dangerous growl of her own boss cutting through the quiet. Who allowed you to wear that? Delphine Reyes was not a woman who blended into the background, though she'd spent the last 3 years trying her hardest to do exactly that. At 28, she was undeniably fat. She carried her weight in a soft belly, wide, heavy hips, and thick thighs. In the sterile glass and steel world of corporate finance, where the women in the executive suites survived on iced lattes and almonds, Delphine was an anomaly. But she wasn't just any executive assistant. She was the gatekeeper to Weston Marino. Weston Marino was the CEO of Marino Freight, a shipping empire that controlled 70% of the cargo moving through the Great Lakes. To the public, he was a ruthless titan of industry, a jaw carved from granite and eyes the color of winter ice. To the underground, he was the undisputed head of the Marino Syndicate, a man who could order a hit over his morning espresso and sign a billion-dollar merger before lunch. He did not tolerate failure. He did not tolerate incompetence. And for 3 years, Delphine had been his flawless, indispensable right hand. She survived in his world by wrapping herself in a uniform of invisibility. Tailored, boxy black pantsuits, high-necked blouses, sensible block heels. She tied her dark hair into severe, uncompromising buns. She left no room for her femininity, no space for anyone to comment on her body. To Weston, she was simply Reyes, a brilliant machine who managed his illicit ledgers, organized his legitimate meetings, and anticipated his every brutal need. Until the night of the charity gala. The gala was the social event of the season, but in reality, it was a summit. The heads of the major crime families from 3 cities were gathering under the guise of philanthropy to renegotiate shipping routes and launder millions through silent auctions. Weston needed Delphine there. He needed her photographic memory to track who was speaking to whom, and he needed her ironclad discretion. "I need you at the hotel by 8. Weston had barked that morning, not even looking up from his desk. "And in something appropriate. We'll be surrounded by the worst vultures on the eastern seaboard. You represent me tonight." You represent me. The words echoed in her mind all day. She'd gone to a high-end boutique, fully intending to buy a shapeless black velvet gown. But then she saw it, a dress of heavy, liquid crimson silk, deep sweetheart neckline, off-the-shoulder sleeves, a corset bodice surrendering to a dramatically draped skirt with a thigh-high slit. It wasn't designed to hide a plus-size body. It was designed to worship it. When the saleswoman zipped her into it, Delphine stared at the mirror in shock. The structured bodice pushed her breasts up into a dizzying display of cleavage. The silk clung to the curve of her stomach and the flare of her hips, celebrating her sheer presence rather than apologizing for it. For the first time in her life, she didn't look like an oversized assistant. She looked like a queen. She looked dangerous. Now, standing in the foyer of Weston's penthouse, Delphine felt a crushing wave of regret, clutching her silver bag, heart hammering. Weston emerged from the master suite, adjusting his cuffs, a terrifyingly handsome man radiating cold authority. "Reyes, do you have the encrypted files on the—" He stopped dead. The silence stretched, pulling taut like a wire about to snap. His cold blue eyes locked onto her, and the temperature in the room seemed to plummet. He didn't just look at her. He devoured her, his gaze dropping to the exposed swell of her breasts, trailing down the crimson silk gripping her waist and belly, lingering on the pale expanse of thigh visible through the slit. Delphine swallowed hard, her confidence evaporating. "Mr. Marino, I have the files on the secure tablet." Weston took a slow, deliberate step forward. The polished veneer of the CEO vanished, replaced entirely by the predator that ruled the underworld. "What are you wearing?" His voice was barely above a whisper, rough as sandpaper. You told me to buy something appropriate." Delphine stammered, stepping back, her heels clicking nervously against the marble. I said appropriate, Delphine. He used her first name, and the sound of it sent a jolt of electricity down her spine. He closed the distance, towering over her, smelling of bergamot, expensive scotch, and the faint metallic tang of gun oil. This is not appropriate. This is a provocation. I can change, she whispered, cheeks burning with humiliation. She'd known it was a mistake. Too exposed, too much. I have my black suit in the car. Weston's large hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her upper arm, his grip tight, grounding her in place. No, he growled, stepping so close she could feel the heat off his chest. We don't have time, but understand this. He leaned down, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. There will be 300 men in that ballroom tonight. Killers, thieves, animals. If a single one of them looks at you for more than a second, I will gouge his eyes out. Do you understand me? Delphine's breath hitched. It wasn't disgust. It was possessiveness, a violently territorial rage. Yes, sir, she breathed. Let's go, he snapped, releasing her. And stay close to me. If you wander out of my sight, you're fired. The drive was agonizingly silent. In the back of the armored car, Delphine felt the weight of Weston's stare burning into the side of her face. He sat with his legs spread wide, taking up space. Halfway there, without a word, he shrugged out of his tuxedo jacket and threw it roughly over her lap, covering the slit that exposed her thigh. Keep it there, he muttered, staring out the window. Delphine gripped the luxurious wool, her heart pounding. When they arrived, the entrance was a circus of flashing cameras and valet attendants. Weston stepped out first, then extended a hand. The moment her heel hit the pavement, the atmosphere shifted. She was used to being invisible at these events, the shadow walking 2 paces behind the great Weston merino. But tonight, in crimson silk, she was a beacon. As they entered the grand ballroom, heads turned. The elite of the underworld, men with cold eyes, women draped in diamonds and starved to perfection, stopped their murmuring. Delphine felt a flush creep up her neck, acutely aware of how much space she occupied in a room full of sharp, thin edges. Weston's hand immediately moved to the small of her back, not a gentlemanly gesture, but a brand, his fingers pressing firmly into the soft flesh above her waist. Eyes up, Delphine, he murmured into her hair. You look down. They smell blood. You belong to me tonight. Act like it. They spent the first hour navigating the shark-infested waters of the summit. Delphine performed flawlessly, mentally cataloguing the whispered agreements between the various families. But the tension in Weston's frame kept escalating. Every time a man's eyes lingered on her cleavage or tracked the sway of her hips, his grip on her back tightened until it bruised. Then Rafael Costa found them. Rafael was the undisputed king of the southern syndicates, the antithesis of Weston. Where Weston was cold, brutal force, Rafael was all sunshine, poison, and lethal charm. He wore a stark white tuxedo jacket against deep olive skin and slicked-back dark hair, flanked by 4 massive bodyguards but walking with the lazy grace of a leopard. Ah, Weston, Rafael purred, approaching their table. Always a pleasure to see the Ice King descend from his throne. Rafael, Weston replied, devoid of warmth, his hand dropping from her back to her hip, pulling her flush against his side. Rafael laughed, a rich, melodic sound, but his dark, serpentine eyes slid past Weston and landed squarely on Delphine. A slow, hungry smile spread across his face. And who is this? Weston, you usually surround yourself with walking skeletons, brittle little things that look like they'd snap in a strong breeze. But this... His eyes raked over her voluptuous frame, lingering explicitly on the swell of her stomach and the curve of her hips. This is a masterpiece, a true, magnificent woman. An artist would have wept to paint you. Delphine froze. She wasn't used to men acknowledging her body, let alone praising it with such raw, unabashed hunger. Weston went rigid. This is my executive assistant, Reyes, and she's busy. Reyes? Raphael tudded, ignoring Weston, reaching out to take her hand before Weston could stop him and pressing his lips to her knuckles, his eyes locked on hers. A beautiful name for a beautiful creature. Tell me, Delphine, does Weston treat you well? Does he appreciate the absolute goddess he has in his employ? Because if he doesn't, the South is beautiful this time of year. I would build a golden cage for a woman like you. Back off, Costa, Weston snarled. The air turned lethal. Weston's bodyguards reached inside their jackets. Raphael's men mirrored them. The surrounding guests went dead silent, stepping away from the imminent violence. So protective, Raphael chuckled, finally releasing her hand, though he didn't step back. He tilted his head, studying the dynamic between them, a cruel, knowing glint sparking in his eyes. But tell me, Weston, does the lovely Delphine know exactly why she works for you? Delphine's brow furrowed. What do you mean? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Quiet, Delphine, Weston commanded, stepping in front of her to shield her. Walk away, Raphael. Right now. Raphael merely leaned to the side, catching her eye over Weston's shoulder, his smile razor-sharp. Such a loyal, devoted secretary. Tell me, Delphine, does your boss pay you enough to cover your brother Marcus's gambling debts? Or did he conveniently forget to mention that 2 years ago he bought Marcus's markers from another family? You aren't an employee, sweetheart, you're collateral. The words hit Delphine like a physical blow to the chest. The ballroom seemed to spin. Her brother Marcus had struggled with a severe gambling addiction years ago, but he'd sworn to her he'd paid it off and gotten clean. She'd believed him. She stared at Weston's broad, unyielding back. Weston, she whispered, her voice breaking. Is it true? Weston didn't look at her. He kept his eyes locked on Raphael, his jaw ticking with a rage so profound it seemed to warp the air. I am going to kill you for that, Costa, he promised, a low mechanical hum of pure violence. You can try, Marino. Raphael smirked, stepping gracefully backward. But I think your pet has figured out the cage is locked. Have a wonderful evening, Delphine. My offer stands. As Raphael melted back into the crowd, Weston finally turned to face her. The possessive heat that had been in his eyes all night was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating wall, and Delphine looked at the man she'd dedicated 3 years of her life to, the man whose touch had thrilled her minutes ago, and realized she was staring at her warden. We're leaving. Weston's voice was a low, dangerous rumble. He didn't wait for a response, his hand clamping down on her wrist, not the protective branding touch from earlier, but the unyielding grip of a jailer. Don't touch me, Delphine hissed, trying to yank free, but he was a man built from violence, and her resistance was futile. I will not make a scene in front of the commission, Delphine, he murmured, stepping so close she had to lean back. Walk with me, or I'll throw you over my shoulder and carry you out. Your choice. The threat wasn't empty. She could see the feral, barely contained violence in his ice-blue eyes. Humiliated, the weight of hundreds of predatory stares burning into her back, she let herself be marched out. The moment the heavy car doors clicked shut, sealing them in the soundproof cabin, the silence shattered. Is it true? Delphine demanded, her voice rising, twisting to face him. Did you buy Marcus's gambling debts? Have I been working off my brother's life this whole time? Weston poured himself a glass of amber liquid from the car's bar, terrifyingly calm. Marcus was in deep with another family, Delphine. He owed them $2 million. Do you know what they do to people who default on $2 million? They don't send collection letters. They take limbs. And when they run out of limbs, they go after family. He took a slow sip. I bought his debt to keep you safe. To keep me safe? Delphine laughed, a harsh, broken sound. You bought my brother's life so you could own mine. You let me believe I earned my place. You let me believe I was valuable because of my mind. But I was just a pet you bought at an auction. You are valuable to me, Weston snapped, his calm facade cracking, the glass threatening to shatter in his grip. You think I let just anyone handle my encrypted ledgers? You think I trust anyone else in this city? You are brilliant, Delphine. But you're also a flight risk. If you knew the truth, you'd have taken Marcus and run. I couldn't allow that." "You had no right," she screamed, hot tears of fury stinging her eyes, her heavy body trapped in the tight bodice of the red dress that had made her feel like a queen an hour ago, and now felt like a brand. "I quit, Weston. The moment we get home, I'm packing my things." Weston lunged across the wide back seat. Before she could gasp, he had her pinned against the leather, his massive frame caging her in, his hands gripping her wide hips, thumbs digging into the soft flesh of her stomach through the silk. "You aren't going anywhere," he breathed, his face inches from hers, the scent of bergamot and danger intoxicating. "You think Rafael Costa told you that out of the goodness of his heart? He wants you, Delphine. He saw the way I look at you. He told you the truth to break your trust in me, so he could swoop in and take you." "Let him!" Delphine spat, though her heart was hammering. "I would burn his whole city to the ground first," Weston promised, without a trace of hyperbole. It was a cold, absolute fact. "You are mine, Delphine. You have always been mine. From the moment you walked into my office 3 years ago, trying to hide those gorgeous curves in a hideous black pantsuit. You thought I didn't notice? You thought I just saw a calculator?" His eyes dropped to her mouth, dark and hungry. "I noticed everything. The way you bite your lip when you find an error in the accounts. The way your thighs move when you pace. The way your stomach curves perfectly into my hands." His grip tightened, pulling her flush against him. "I didn't buy Marcus's debt to enslave you. I bought it to make sure you could never leave me." Delphine's breath hitched. She was entirely trapped, physically cornered in a bulletproof car, financially indentured to a crime boss, emotionally paralyzed by the raw, terrifying confession spilling from his lips. "You're a monster," she whispered, a tear finally escaping down her cheek. Weston reached up, his rough thumb gently wiping it away, his touch jarringly tender against the violence in his words. "I am the devil, Delphine," he corrected softly. "And I've finally caught my angel. Now we're going back to the penthouse, and we're going to fix this." The private elevator ride was agonizing. Delphine's mind raced, trying to find a way out. But where could she go? Weston controlled the police, the politicians, the ports. If she ran, he'd find her. And if he didn't, Rafael Costa might. The moment the doors parted, Weston strode into the living room, tearing off his tie. "Sit down, Delphine." But she remained standing, arms crossed over her chest. "No, I want to see the contract. I want to know exactly how much my brother owes you." Weston let out a harsh sigh. He walked to his desk, unlocked a hidden drawer, pulled out a thick folder, and instead of handing it to her, slammed it down on the glass coffee table. "Read it." Delphine cautiously approached and flipped it open. She expected loan shark markers, promissory notes signed in her brother's sloppy handwriting. Instead, she found bank transfers, dozens of them, wire transfers from offshore accounts, all routed to a dummy corporation. She squinted, her financial brain automatically analyzing the routing numbers. These are payments from the Costa family to Marcus." She froze, the blood draining from her face. "Your brother didn't just have a gambling problem, Delphine," Weston said, his voice terrifyingly gentle now, walking around the table to stand in front of her. 2 months ago, Marcus approached Rafael Costa. He offered him my shipping schedules, the manifests for our illegal shipments, the security codes for the ports. Delphine shook her head violently. "No, Marcus wouldn't do that. He's an idiot, but he's not suicidal. He knows what you'd do to him. He did it because Rafael promised him $5 million and a safe haven abroad," Weston stated. "But Rafael never intended to pay him. He intended to use the information to wipe out my operations, then kill Marcus to tie up loose ends, and take you as a trophy." Delphine's legs suddenly gave out. The sheer weight of the betrayal was too much. She sank onto the edge of the sofa, the folder slipping from her hands and scattering across the floor. Marcus had sold her out. He'd sold out the man who employed her, putting a target squarely on her back. "I intercepted the communication 6 weeks ago," Weston continued, kneeling on the rug in front of her, a position of subservience that looked entirely unnatural on a man of his power. He took her trembling hands in his warm, calloused ones. "By the laws of the syndicate, I should have put a bullet in your brother's head the moment I found out, and I should have tortured you to learn if you were complicit. But you didn't," she whispered, staring into his eyes. "No," Weston agreed. "Instead, I quietly rerouted the ships, fed Marcus fake manifests to give to Raphael, and absorbed a $20 million loss to make it look convincing. I bought his silence, and I bought his debt to make sure he couldn't run anywhere else." He leaned forward, his hands sliding up her arms, pulling her toward him. "I broke every rule I've ever lived by, Delphine. I put my entire empire at risk. I let Raphael think he was winning. Why do you think I did that?" Delphine couldn't speak. Her throat was tight, choked with a chaotic mix of horror, relief, and an overwhelming, terrifying warmth. "Because I love you," Weston confessed, the words rough and heavy, pulled from the darkest part of his soul. "I love your brilliant mind. I love your fierce loyalty. And God help me, I am obsessed with your body. I'm obsessed with the way you look in this dress. I wanted to kill every man who dared to look at you tonight. Because every soft, beautiful curve on your body belongs to me." He didn't wait for an answer. He surged upward, his hands burying into her severe bun, pulling the pins loose until her hair cascaded over her shoulders. His mouth crashed down on hers. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a conquest, the desperate, starving kiss of a man who had denied himself for 3 years. Delphine gasped against his mouth, and the moment her lips parted, she surrendered. All the years of hiding, of trying to shrink herself, of feeling too big, too fat, too unlovable, vanished in the heat of his absolute devotion. She wrapped her arms around his neck, matching his hunger. Weston groaned, his hands roaming over her body, worshipping the swell of her breasts, tracing the curve of her waist, gripping her wide thighs. He made her feel magnificent, like a goddess carved from marble and silk. When he finally pulled away, they were both breathless. He rested his forehead against hers, his eyes dark. "Marcus is on a private jet to a rehab facility abroad. He'll be safe, but he'll never return to this city. You don't owe me anything, Delphine. Your debt is forgiven. You're free to walk out that door right now." He pulled back slightly, framing her face with his hands. "But if you stay as my equal, not my assistant, not collateral. You stay as the queen of this city. You stay in my bed, and you wear whatever the hell you want as long as I'm the only one taking it off you." Delphine looked at the ruthless, terrifying man kneeling before her. He'd stripped away her illusions, eliminated her enemies, and offered her the world on a silver platter. She reached out, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. A slow, confident smile spread across her face, the smile of a woman who finally knew her worth. "Well," Delphine whispered, pulling his lips back down to hers. "It's a good thing I like the color red, so here's what I keep coming back to with this one." Delphine spent 3 years shrinking herself, convinced that being invisible was the only way to be safe, until one dress and one very dangerous night forced her to see her own worth reflected back in the eyes of a man who'd noticed everything all along. Sometimes the cage we think we're in isn't the one that's actually holding us. And sometimes the person who seems the most dangerous is the only one willing to burn it all down to keep us safe. Now I want to hear from you. Did Delphine make the right call staying with Weston? Or should she have run from that gilded cage the second the door opened? There's no wrong answer, so drop yours in the comments, because I genuinely read everyone. If you loved this twist-filled, intense romance, do me a favor and hit that like button right now, share this story with a friend who lives for a possessive alpha romance, and subscribe so you never miss the next one. Ring that notification bell too, because the next story is even more shocking. I'll see you there.